podcast to be named later here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. His name is Jarrod Prugar. My name is Alex Stumpf. Jarrod, how's it going, man?
Postseason baseball. I know the Pirates aren't involved, but throughout the first week, it's been a lot of fun to watch, and it's been super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's straight steel. Randy Arozarena. I mean,
the man in the Arozarena.
That was
like that.
I'm not getting the reference here.
The man in the arena, Theodore Roosevelt's quote.
There we go.
Come on, know your history, Stumpf. You're killing me.
Wow.
But
I like Teddy Roosevelt. That was well done.
I can pull stuff out of wherever, whenever.
Do you want to just make this a Teddy Roosevelt podcast, or
no?
Should we continue on with the Pirates?
So before we get to that, before we get to more Roosevelt, we'll talk Roosevelt. I obviously grew up in Altoona, and there were two junior high schools or middle schools, 7th through 9th grade. I went to Keith. The other one was Roosevelt, named after Teddy Roosevelt. And of course, they were the Rough Riders, and they were our rivals. So there's that fun fact. But let's talk Pirates.
No. This seems like a missed. We'll get to the Pirates eventually. Sorry to everyone listening, but
we do have an entire offseason.
Yeah. I feel like that's a missed opportunity, though. That you should have had one Roosevelt for Teddy, and then the rival should have been for the FDR Roosevelt.
No, we were the David Scott Keith Rams, and they were the Teddy Roosevelt or Theodore Roosevelt Rough Riders, and they were our rivals. And I actually have a stuffed ram, not an actual ram, but like a stuffed animal of our mascot on my work desk here. No Roosevelt stuff, because obviously that would be like, being a Yankees fan and having something Red Sox displayed at your house. There's a rivalry quite like that.
Yet you're able to drop a Teddy Roosevelt pun every once in a while for Randy Arozarena.
Oh man, it fit perfectly and got 0 likes on Twitter, and I hate myself for it. But if you were under a rock over the last few days, on Thursday night, Randy Arozarena pulled off a feat that nobody had ever done before in Major League Baseball in the postseason. He hit a home run, which was an absolute jack, and then he stole home. And before we started recording, Alex and I were kind of doing the play-by-play of the steal, and the jump that he got was absolutely incredible. And he was safe by at least 2 steps. Even Jerry Meals couldn't have screwed that up. Yeah,
I mean, part of it was who was pitching for the Red Sox at the time. I can't remember, but he steps off the rubber to throw home. So it's not a pitch; it's a pickoff attempt. Which, okay, the batter can't defend, against the pitch or anything, but that takes so much time. You threw him off balance. That's just what it is. If I'm not mistaken, it had 77 miles per hour as far as the velo on the throw to the plate. Or that could have been as fast as Arozarena was running. You just never know. He was booking it.
Yeah, and I think and that's what I think what makes the Rays fun though too, is that they're a scrappy bunch. They're fast. They have a lot of guys that you really don't know anything about. You don't know much about, but damn, they're good.
Yeah, they are. And actually, let's just make this whole first segment about the playoffs up to right now, because it has been very interesting. It's been this Major League Baseball, they're bringing the goods so far. And the Rays in particular, I had a conversation DMing about this. Like, how many players on this Rays team? This is a team that number 1 seed in the American League for the 2nd year in a row. Last 3 years, playoffs each year, no team in the American League has a better winning percentage than the Tampa Bay Rays. How many of these players are going to even potentially sniff the Hall of Fame?
Oh, Shane Baz.
Oh yeah. Besides that, no, but seriously, like, there's Nelson Cruz, who I don't think will get in, but he'll get some votes. He'll be on there, but he's also not really been a Ray for that long. He was acquired, in July. He hasn't been part of this run. Just to talk about some of the people who aren't there anymore, Blake Snell won't be. in that
disappointed
mix.
Kevin Cash can't take him out of the game when he doesn't need to this year.
Tommy Pham won't be like legitimately the guy I think who has the best chance is the guy who's been in the major leagues for like 3 months in Wander Franco. And that's just because those 80 grade prospects, you don't get 80 grades. Like that's like Bryce Harper, Mike Trout territory up there.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes back to this. Good teams, I think overcome whether they have the no-name Rays. Let's not forget about Jordan Luplow, former Pirate.
Good baseball player.
Yes, I completely agree. I remember having multiple discussions with Michael Ryan when he was the manager of the Outsider Curve about Luplow and Luplow's hands in particular. And he's a guy that was kind of flying under the radar, and he has continued to fly under the radar.
Yeah. And you know what? I just pulled up the Rays stats here real fast. Their number one player this year going by WAR was Brandon Lau at 4.8 WAR. Like, this is a team that doesn't have superstars. Like, Brian Reynolds had 6 this past year. But, then you've got Austin Meadows at 11th with 2 WAR, which is, above average baseball player, average-ish, a little above in that regard. And it's just a very deep team. It is a team of Kevin Kiermaiers and Joey Wendles, and they look good. I know they don't have a lot of starting pitching, but they know how to use that bullpen. That bullpen is more valuable in the postseason, I believe. A good enough hitting core. The team I thought was going to win the World Series going into this postseason, the White Sox, they got off to a pretty shaky start. So I made my bet. I'll sleep in it. But if they get bounced, I think the Rays are going to be my second choice.
The Rays are my first choice out of the AL, and I think the Giants are my. It's not a thing. I think the Giants are my top choice out of the NL to get to the World Series, and I think the Rays do actually pull it off. I like what Kevin Cash has done with the bullpen. They're really good, and I like watching this team on Thursday. They were a lot of fun to watch, and again, I think they are more of a complete team. And I think that's what makes them so intriguing, because they can beat you in a multitude of different ways. They got power from Cruz to Rosarina. They've got speed as well. And they've got the pitching too. And they're doing it with young pitching. I don't think any of the starters in the first 3 games for the Rays are over the age of 25.
Yeah. I mean, it is a young rotation. There is no Charlie Morton anymore, even though that would probably help them at this moment.
No, he's in the postseason with the Braves, right?
With the Barbs, that's right. Wild card games, I have absolutely nothing to say about Yankees Red Sox. That was just a generic whatever baseball game. And whenever you compare it to Cardinals Dodgers, being just a pitching treat. That was a fun baseball game to watch.
Yeah, I mean Wainwright shoved. Scherzer, I thought, did really well too. Even though the result didn't really end up. I mean, he still threw really well. I didn't think he should have come out in that part of the game. Same thing with Wainwright. I mean, if you're gonna have that sort of a leash on Wainwright during that game, I mean, why did you hit for him, or why didn't you hit for him?
Yeah, but you threw away an out.
Yeah, but that was a great game, in my opinion, and that was exactly what makes the wild card game so much fun. You're on the edge of your seat for 3 hours, 3.5 hours, but for all 9 innings, because every pitch matters, every at bat matters, every play in the field matters, and that's what that's the special thing about the wild card game, and that's what makes it cool. As I go back and forth all the time, because 1 game series isn't baseball, right? But so what? It's 1 game. It's a winner take all. I think that's what makes it. That's what makes it special and unique. And hey, guess what? If you don't like it, be better.
Yeah. Where do you fall on touching back to Scherzer and Wainwright real fast. And we just talked about the Rays. I mean, that legitimately might be 2 Hall of Famers, going off in a 1-game playoff right there. But where do you fall on the trusting your guy versus, bullpenning in those situations? Because both of those teams had really good bullpens. And I know Chris Taylor hit the walk-off homer, but it's hard to fault, what St. Louis's bullpen did that day. They backed up their starter pretty well right up until that last pitch. I don't know. I was with you that I was not to say Max Scherzer's a future Hall of Famer. He should get opportunities like that, but I don't know. I felt like he's got a chance at a Cy Young this year. Maybe you let him push a little more. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's anybody that I would let go deeper, I think it's definitely Scherzer. But at the same time, it's winner take all. It's if you don't win that game, you're done. Your season's over. So, I mean, you have to put your team in the best position to succeed. Typically, if that's game 1 of a 3-game series, you let them go.
Oh, absolutely.
But the stakes were so high in that instance. I think that's what makes it so, and that's what makes it special and unique too. Should he have stayed in the game? Could he have stayed in the game? Probably. Even Wainwright could have too. But then they get to the quality bullpens, the quality arms back there, and the arms get it done. And and sometimes it doesn't work out that way, right? It could have very easily they take Scherzer out and the bullpen implodes and bad things happen. Or in Wainwright's instance, they bring in the bullpen for St. Louis and they let those runners score, and it's a completely different ball game. It wasn't like the Red Sox game where they just beat Garrett Cole to a pulp, and then in a weird twist, Garrett Cole was followed by Clay Holmes in a postseason baseball game.
Yeah, I was. First of all, I forgot I had something to actually say about that Yankees Red Sox game. Kyle Schwarber is just the boogeyman for Garrett Cole.
Third inning in the wild card game. And honestly, I'm watching that game because the Yankees were my team growing up, and I know you hate this, but Derek Jeter was my boy, right? And so I was a Yankees fan growing up. So I'm watching this game and I'm like, where have I seen Kyle Schwarber do that to Garrett Cole before? I was like, 2015.
Yeah.
Very same situation.
Yeah, that was
So
that was one of those like instantaneous. Everybody on Twitter had like a group think of he did it again. He did it again.
Right. And so and what's funny about those 2 games, if you compare them, right? If you compare the Red Sox and the Yankees to the Cardinals and the Dodgers, obviously Dodgers, Red Sox move on. Great. Good for them. And what's funny is that they both play the winners of their divisions. The Dodgers play the Giants for the first time ever in the postseason. The Red Sox obviously are playing the Rays. But like, what's funny to me is that like the Cardinals, nobody's talking about what the Cardinals are going to do in the offseason. They're fine. But like this entire situation for the Yankees opened up an entirely big can of worms because that's another postseason game, especially a wild card game, where Garrett Cole struggled mightily, which isn't out of the ordinary by any means. But it's just one of those situations where, I mean, is Aaron bleeping Boone back? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows there. And, I to close this first one, I hate the Dodgers and Giants have never met in the postseason before. Yes, it wasn't considered a formal like division series or championship series or anything like that. But what about Bobby Thompson?
Oh, okay.
That's
true. Shot heard around the world.
Yeah. What happened about 1962? Twitter taught me about that one, but come on. There's baseball history there. It's fine. I'll take you're technically right, but I refuse.
The San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers have not played.
1962. I learned that the hard way after I put on that they hadn't met in the postseason since Bobby Thompson.
But no, and I think that's what I mean. This is the most exciting time of the year other than opening day, right? So I'm very excited to see what the rest of the playoffs have in store because I think every game should be entertaining. I think they're all pretty evenly matched. throughout both the AL and the NL. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Pirates Podcast, to be named later on the TK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. That's $20 from Alex and I, if you can say that without spitting your drink up or choking on your words. But Alex,
$20.
Yours. You make more than I do.
Oh.
Or at least I imagine you would make more. You're tenured on the Pirates beat, and I'm just the new guy. I'm just the minor.
You're longer than me.
I've been with the site longer. Yeah, it's crazy because you keep following me everywhere I go.
That's right.
But September is, outside of the Green Day song, "Wake Me Up When September Ends," we're finally into October. But a couple of guys for the Pirates had some really good months of September that really propelled them and made a case for them for the next year and even beyond, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're gonna just run through a couple of those guys here, pitcher and hitter for each. My hitter, I'm batting leadoff here.
Alex, wait. You're hitting from the leadoff spot. What's your OPS?
My OPS at a leadoff spot is 853.
Oh, please don't tell me that's Anthony Alford's OPS.
In the month of September, it was.
Oh.
That was, look, I get people if people are still skeptical, I can't talk anymore, skeptical of Anthony Alford. There are definitely still more strikeouts than you would like to see out of a player with that, hitting profile, defensive profile. I can't even argue that Tucker Barnhart just absolutely demolished him on the base paths in the month of September. Too many caught stealings there. I don't know what that scouting report was, but it probably should be updated. But he had a really good month. And we were basing, he kind of went into spring training this last year after a couple good games. No, this was a real month. This was a real month whenever he got on base. He showed some power. He showed his ability in the field. He showed a willingness to run on the base paths, well, maybe to his own detriment, but showing that can be part of his game. He's a fast player. Once he's able to get that first step taken care of, I think he could steal a decent amount of bases. Look, the way I look at this outfield spot right now, or just outfield position, there's Bryan Reynolds in center field, and who knows really who's going to be flanking him. At some point, Travis Swaggerty will be called up. Maybe O'Neal Cruz does eventually go to a corner outfield spot, but I don't see really anything guaranteed. I think an Alfred Gamble, corner outfield, so not saying that's going to be, a big, sexy outfield right there, but I think that's probably the most likely at this given time. Maybe there's a trade or a signing that comes along that changes that. I don't know. I think Alford benefited from consistent playing time, consistently playing left field, more consistent at-bats down the stretch, still a whole lot to, polish up, iron out, but, this is still the lottery ticket player. If he can be an impact player still.
No, right. And I agree. I mean, the biggest thing for him, I think, is he is very much feast or famine. It's either great or it's not at all great. And, that's, I think the consistency in the at-bats, I think is huge. Consistency in playing time is always going to benefit you. I mean, it's very hard to be a bench player at any level in any sport, especially baseball, because you're coming into games cold and it's just not a great situation to be a part of. But when you're playing every day and you're getting those everyday reps, it's a heck of a lot different than what you would typically expect. So I think that's good. And he made the most of it. And I think that's all you can ask. And yeah, the outfield is wide open outside of center field. That's obviously Bryan Reynolds' spot for years to come. Whether that means Cruz is there or they kind of just, you make the right fielder utility guy and use a couple different people, or whether they give, Alford the left field spot. I mean, it's still wide open. And I think he did a really good job of finishing the year on a high note. and going into the offseason with some confidence, because I think that's going to really just feed into spring training next year. And if he can come out of camp, with having a good spring training, that could be a really good thing. But for me, he's got to be more consistent at the plate. I mean, the base running, they're trying to be aggressive. I get it. They're doing it at all levels. But the biggest thing for me, though, is the fact that, you just got to cut down that strikeout rate. And if you're able to get on base a little bit more, then I'm all for it, or all for it.
Boo. Who's your hitter?
Mine's Cole Tucker. And here's why. I think defensively, obviously the glove is played, and that's both at shortstop, second base, and he's honestly a pretty serviceable outfielder as well. Even though that experiment just sort of started within the last few years, but his hitting is starting to come around. You've mentioned some of his mechanical fixes, and I think the consistent playing time helps. And Tucker is a guy that needs consistent playing time, and that's what he was getting at Indy. Obviously, when he comes up, it's not always quite the case. But I think he did a really good job in September of coming in and establishing himself as, hey, listen, if it's down between Kevin Newman and Cole Tucker, who's it going to be and why? And in my opinion, as great as Kevin Newman is with the glove, the offense has still got to pick up. But he's obviously a coachable guy, and Tucker's the same way. But Tucker's Tucker, and I think he's a guy that could really be that utility guy and give you some really good everyday reps, whether you need him at shortstop, second base, or even in the outfield.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think this is that controversial opinion anymore. I think Tucker has a higher offensive ceiling than Kevin Newman right now, which imagine saying that 2 years ago. That'd be really hard to believe, given just where Kevin Newman was as a hitter. But I think there's a lot that Tucker zeroed in right on those final weeks of the season, and exact same boat as Anthony Alford. You don't know what's going to happen. We don't know for sure what's going to happen in that middle infield right now. All we can say is that there is going to be competition, come spring training, between whomever is in that mix, whether it's Chavis and Newman and Tucker and Castro and Cruz, and just, a long list of guys that you could just throw over there. But until that actually happens, it's just speculation. I think Tucker zeroed in on some stuff, was able to improve. And if nothing else, he showed that, the glove might be worth keeping him in there. Not to say that Newman's not a slouch. Newman might be nominated for Gold Glove this year. If he is, he's deserving. You're not dropping off going to Tucker.
No, and like we said, the glove has always played. It's always been that offensive aspect of his game. And if he can get that turned around, he could be a very good everyday player at the major league level. And I've thought that since I've seen him in Altoona. And obviously, he makes those adjustments. And again, it's very tough when you're not playing every day. But he's been able to turn it around, and he finished the year on a strong note. As much as Alfred did, I think Cole Tucker even went up to him just a little bit in that department with where he was at the beginning of the season to where he was game 162.
I did hitter first. You do pitcher first.
Oh, I get to be the starting pitcher to start this off. And my guy is Mitch Keller. He is the most, I think, intriguing candidate out of the starting rotation. He showed some flashes of great and flashes of good, and he showed some flashes of oh no. And but the good flashes and the great flashes, I thought, outnumbered the oh no's. And I think that's a sign of growth. And as weird as it is to say that from a guy that was a top prospect, you've got to see what he's got. And he is part of the future, but if he can turn it around, and I think he's on the right track. He's strung together a couple of good starts, and when that happens, you build that confidence. And I think you're really starting to see the Mitch Keller that that should have been playing, or that should be out there every fifth day.
Yeah, and I think that last outing of the season, we might look back and that was the most important one of the year. For whenever they said, hey, Oscar Marin challenged him and said, hey, let's work on your delivery. I want you to be more whippy and, extend a little more. And I wrote that in a mound visit whenever he was demoted. I wrote that, he just wasn't getting as much extension whenever he was throwing in his motion. And there was a drop in his velocity. There was a drop in his spin. And not saying that, it all came back, but, the first time throwing it like that, there was an uptick in the velocity. There was an uptick in the spin. The results were better. There's a lot riding on Mitch Keller.
Oh, absolutely. That
he's been afforded more chances. He will be afforded more chances than a lot of other players that, who come in with an opportunity, but, with maybe 1 foot out the door coming in. But if he does figure something out, and I think that extension is a part of maximizing what he can do on a major league field. If that happens, that would be a huge, huge boost to the rotation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the skill set's there. The talent is there. It's just channeling that in the right way and performing, going out and executing. You can be the greatest player on paper that you want to be. You could have a 0.00 ERA, spin rate, and tens of thousands even, or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but you got to go out and execute. And that's the biggest part. And if you don't go out and execute, then on paper, it doesn't really matter. You can just light it on fire and hope for the best. And, you have to go out and execute. That's the name of the game. And if you're not able to do that, then see ya.
Pitcher, I don't want to just double down on Mitch Keller, and I'll be honest, I couldn't really think of anyone who – there were a lot of injuries down the stretch. So, I would have liked to see more Bryce Wilson. I would have liked to see more Dylan Peters. I would have liked to see a lot, but I just don't have a lot. So I'm going to go based off of the guy, and this is partially his results, and it's partially just what I heard and what people are saying, over those last couple outings. But I think Max Kranick showed a little something in those final 3 starts of the year. Final 3, we're not extremely small sample size. We're talking about 14 innings, which in itself isn't what you really want out of 3 starts. But a 3.86 ERA, 4.38 FIP, struck out 13 in those 14, only 1 homer. A couple times where it looked like he really shoved, he developed. This was a tough year for Max or any pitcher in that situation. It's tough being that 27th guy, on the roster who comes up and makes those spot starts and then gets optioned. And early on in the year, it was something that probably weighed on him a little more than he would let on. But as the year progressed, every time they sent him down to the minor leagues, this is another thing Marine said. Every time they sent him back down to the minor leagues, they're like, we want you to work on this. He came up, there was noticeable improvement there. We want you to focus on your delivery. He comes back up, there's improvement with the delivery. And, for a 23-year-old kid making in the major leagues, finishing off the year fairly strong, I think that's encouraging. I think he's got a shot at making the opening day rotation next year. If nothing else, I don't see him bouncing up and down between the majors. I think once something happens, it's going to be like, okay, Max Kranick's going to get an extended look up here.
No, I think that's a really good point. And we forget that he started in Altoona this year.
Yeah.
So to go from AA to the majors, while, of course, certain people on this podcast have done it, and even Rodolfo Castro as well, that's not always an easy thing to do. And so the growth that he's shown there, I think it's huge. And I think that last start was super important for him, again, getting into the offseason and really getting in there with some confidence. And you could see the confidence really start to build for him on the mound as he went. And when you go out there in your first game and you perform the way that he did, and you're setting these expectations that aren't really realistic. So you're going to come down to earth, and it's how good or bad is that going to be? How dramatic is that return to earth going to be? Is it going to be a crash? Is it going to be a smooth landing? And I think he crashed a little bit. It was a little bit rocky. But again, he's 23 years old. This is his first extended experience in Major League Baseball or in the majors. So I think he's got a lot of room for improvement. But the fact that he goes out there and improves every start, for the most part, is a really good sign.
And like I said, I couldn't be like, yeah, Anthony Bonda or Kyle Keller, or just like I just watched a lot of pitching that I don't see having any impact on this organization long term, and a lot of pitchers who could ended up getting hurt. So it was not to take anything away from those last couple starts from Max. I meant that legitimately. I think he did challenge hitters. He said a couple times, there were big moments, there were a couple runners on where he executed his pitches. He got out of jams. Good to see. But to say pitcher of the month, or how did we preface this? Someone who really intrigued us in September.
Yeah, who improved their stock.
Yeah, he did, but not drastically, not like Tucker or Alford.
Right, and it's a little different right, and it's a little different, especially for the pitchers. But I think he's a guy that could be in that back end of that rotation next year if things go well.
I think so too.
Listen, we are agreeing. Like what?
No, we're not allowed to do that. We're gonna take a minute to sort this out, so we can come back nice and angry to the last segment of the show. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Pirates podcast, to be named later on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. I'm saying it slow and methodical so that I don't chew up my words and really sound like Alex sounded at the end of that last segment. But Alex, the Pirates, for the second minor league season in a row, I don't count 2020 as a real year because there was no minor league, there wasn't a minor league season, but they let go of a top level manager in AAA and Bryan Esposito.
Yeah, and he was running the alternate site last year and this season. A bit of a surprising move given where he was at the start of the season. It looked like standing wise, but that's the curse of minor league baseball. It's tough to always. Sometimes you just need to bring in fresh blood. Sometimes there's maybe something else that contributes to the factor there. He didn't have a whole lot to work with in Indianapolis this year also. So I don't know how you could really assess him or the rest of the coaching staff with what's going on or what they were provided. Like Hanrahan's sticking around, which if there's anyone on that coaching staff that you have to hang on to, it's Joel Hanrahan right now.
Right. And with him and John Nunnally, I think those are two guys that the Pirates think highly of, and they're holdovers from the last regime. And, when you have a situation like Esposito, and he's a guy that was in the organization before Charrington was here, it's just, hey, what have you done for me lately? And I think at times, hey, somebody has to get sacrificed, and he was that guy. Much like, and I don't think it's quite the same thing as Mike Ryan was a couple years ago. But now what I'm interested in is to see how they move, if they move guys up, if they move managers up, because we talked about all the time this year of keeping groups of players together. Well, will they do that with coaching staffs too? Will Miguel Perez move to AAA? Will Kieran Matheson move to AA? I'm very interested to see how they handle that and really what the Pirates do moving forward with that position. And maybe it would be one of us. I don't know.
I think if Miguel Perez is going to be interviewed, he's going to have a shot at it. I think that's the logical choice because I feel like he tapped into something with O'Neal Cruz. He tapped into something with Contreras. He helped tap into stuff with, Kanan Smith and Najigba, with Cal Mitchell, with just that core. And if you have an opportunity to keep that band together, especially next year, a lot of those guys are probably going to get called up and be optioned back. I mean, how many guys just go up to the major leagues and that's that? You never go back. Having, I think, a stable voice there for a year would be beneficial. Then again, if they keep him in Double-A for another year and they move, say, Mattinson up to Triple-A, then, the Pegueros, the Gonzaleses, they could have a friendly face whenever they come up. So we'll find out exactly what they want to do. If it's an internal hire, I don't know how you can go anywhere besides Mattinson or Perez, or I'll just throw Hanrahan's name in the mix also if he would rather do that, even though we never see pitching coaches become managers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. And I mean, this is really, the first time that the Cheringtons had to do this.
Perez was kind of this.
Right. But it's going to be interesting to see really what Cherington does and how they handle this. And, this is, for me, it's one of the more intriguing things of the offseason, because I don't think we'll even find out until probably spring training. So, but no, it's just one of those deals. It's, hey, that's the nature of the business. It is a business. At the end of it, it's, hey, who knows what's going to happen next? And I think that's kind of, where I'm at with it. And I'm working and seeing Miguel Perez in action. I think he's going to be he would be excellent for it. Same thing with Madison. What he did in Greensboro was obviously, that team was talented, but they were a very competitive and very, hardworking group. And I think that's the future is bright if they continue to get these guys to develop. And I think that's a really good situation to be in this offseason.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast to be named later here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe wherever you find fine podcasts. Be sure to follow along with the other great shows that we have here on this channel. For Jarrod Prugar, this is Alex Stumpf saying thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again next week.